Philosophers talk to our times. I finally think I've understood who the detective is in Bleak House and how it works. Gosh, that's taken me 20 years, I think. But unless this is a total mystery, and I am being self-referential here, let me explain. Those of you who follow these will know that I think I understand ethics and the theory of common notions best through reading Bleak House. You see, right at the core of Bleak House, there are 5 characters, 5 different strategies of reason. 5 different ways, then, you can form common notions and engage within the world. There is the narrator of the book, Esther, who always narrates, or at least half of the book, in the imperfect, and is the woman of habit. She uses her busy old Mother Hubbard ways to understand a world, to manage first a house, and then an estate, and then a successful life, who moves out then her habit and teaches others it, who learns on the job from experience, but having learned from experience, just makes deductions and moves on. She became then the way I would understand the propositions I was doing earlier on in the week. Those that are caught up from about proposition 20 to 40, book 4 of ethics, where Spinoza is trying to understand what it means to live under the regime of reason and to have habits that one can share, good states of mind, ways of being part of the world and understanding what it means to be capable of acting and reacting in very many ways. Then there was Mr. Jardice, and Mr. Jardice, the archetypal man of reason. He imposes reason whether it is appropriate or not, and therefore reckons people up according to the bean count of good and of evil, and doesn't really know what evil is. And always, or almost always, not quite, his schemes go awry, because what he's reckoning up is never what he thinks it is. And so he cannot command the future that he dreams of. For he is a man of reason, applying reason where reason cannot be applied. And then there is dear Caddy, my favourite character in the book. Caddy, who, from a single positive experience in a dreadful childhood, a dreary monotony, held as a slave by her mother to do good works, she has one positive experience, a walk in London with Esther. And from that one positive experience, she pulls out the successful life of a dance mistress, the successful life of a mother of a deaf and dumb child, the successful life of somebody who has to work hard but live well. And fourthly, there's Alan. Now, Alan is the erstwhile love interest of Esther, who's hardly in the book. He spends most of his time journeying away to India or China, or getting shipwrecked and having all sorts of adventures firmly off-scene, and comes back for the last third of the book. He is then the kind of the man of mystery, a doctor, who forms common notions that are either very close or very far, very abstract in the world of medicine, or very near, for he is the only person who can talk to Esther's friend Richard, who is drinking and gambling himself to death. But there was a 5th character, Bucket. Now, Bucket is the detective. When I wrote my book 20 years ago or so, I left him out, actually. I left him out because I knew he didn't fit within the framework. You see, I was a good little Kantian 20 years ago. I thought in 4s. And so there were 4 schemata. And the 5th, Bucket, I was aware that he was there, but I couldn't find where he was in ethics, and I couldn't work out how to understand him. But that's because I'm a mongoose and was cutting corners. It's blinking obvious if you read ethics. To understand what a common notion really is, the common notions that spring up from your emotions. Emotions that Spinoza says you have to understand are like forces of nature. You are more like a tempest than a soul. To understand them, to rummage through them, to breed from the tempest of emotions those elements that are reasonable, that will lead you to reason. That is the work of a detective. That is the work of the good Bucket, who has a handle on everything, who always knows anything, who sees through secrets, who solves the mystery that occupies the last fifth of the novel, to his understanding of what is really meant and felt by human emotion. But how does Spinoza do it? Well, Spinoza does it through, of course, the famous, or why does Spinoza think it works this way? Let's put it that way. Through the very famous analogy, he draws this analogy, illustration of what makes a common notion different, and what makes it reasonable to always look for common notions, even in the fiercest of flames where the golden lotus can be planted. He takes for the example of a man with a hammer striking down with all his might and all his main. And Spinoza says the action is one and the same. But if he is striking at the face of an enemy to render it, that is an act of destruction. The act of moving his hand down of the cold steel on it is in fact directly opposed to what it is striking. It is deliberately opposed. It destroys a thing there and then. How different, Spinoza says, from a blacksmith who makes exactly the same action on hot iron, but thinks always of what the iron will do, how it will respond and how he will respond to the iron, how he will respond to the heat and to that heat that is needed to move the iron further, how he will cool the iron and heat it again, how he will use then all the properties of iron as it reveals itself to him in that act, to change what its nature is in such a way that it can achieve more things, it can do more things, and he can achieve more things. It becomes then a tool for him to wield, for him to use, for him to open up another world, open up other dreams, other uses. The act then of striking down is the gateway to a myriad different movements, different world, different things he could do. By the act of striking your enemy's face, that is the end of it. And so Spinoza says, one is an act of great evil, and the other is an act of reason. But the act is one and the same. And the point, of course, Spinoza is making is totally clear. It is that even in the strangest of occasions, you can always find a common notion. There are always adequate ideas. Sometimes when you're reading ethics, you see, you bang your head against a tunnel wall saying, "What? What's an adequate idea, Benedict? How will I ever form one?" And you do it till your brain bleeds. But Spinoza doesn't really mean you to do that, because he means you to rummage around in your own spirit, to try and understand common notions, not then through a great act of logic or a deep act of understanding, because they're not that, or even understand them through an attempt to understand reason as it combines with the world. It might be about to get noisy. I better warn you. The last time a bike came, who's down here, very patiently waiting, attacked me, because she does when bikes come by. We're having a bikey day today. This is actually the second time I've done this video. But anyway, now I've warned you, you'll all know what's about to happen, so you can all sit and watch. So Spinoza then is saying that is not what you have to do to find adequate ideas. Adequate ideas aren't a mystery. They're not something lost within the void. They're not something you have to deeply discover, because they're already within you. You have to look at your emotions. And he presents then a lexicon of emotions, a set, a way of feeling, to understand and to sift through what you are, so that as any tempest of emotions arises like a storm within your soul, you will start to know what to look for, what to feel. And so, he says, for instance, the emotion of joy is in itself good, for it opens out on human power and is always in accordance with reason. An emotion of pain in itself is always bad. And yet there is a sense, of course, where joy can be bad, if it relates only to one part of you, if you become besotted with this drink or that cheese, until it becomes all you dream about and lodges in your mind as some stubborn affect. Joy is good then, but joy localized in love is always dangerous, because you will confuse the object for the love, for the joy. The joy is the opening. It is the opening up of your mind. And that is the thing of reason. Likewise, and it follows, of course, hate is always bad. And pity is always bad. For pity inspires you through pain to do what you would do through reason anyway. Although, of course, Spinoza does say very carefully that a man without pity or without reason is a monster. And he presents then a lexicon, a way of rummaging through who or what you are, to understand those emotions that are liable to open out into other worlds, allow you to think yourself differently, while those that are simple, blind traps and go nowhere, catch you in the one soul, in the one time frame. And so, through knowing who you are, he says, two things will of course immediately follow. Through this rummaging through your emotions. Joy is good. Merriment is a joy that cannot be had in excess, although it is easier to define abstractly. Hate is always bad, and so a person of reason meets hate with love, as so far as he can, and makes miscomprehension with patience. And if you can do that, and it is my favourite line in all of ethics, a man of reason will fight the joyous war. For all his enemies will become his friends. The more so they once hated him, they will now love them. It is a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And one that, if you can do it, does work. It's how you talk down an enemy, or talk yourself out of a situation. I use it all the time. Because actually meeting people from where they're not expecting, not from fury, but understanding, is one of the best ways to undermine any hostility and to comprehend it differently. To reframe it doesn't always work, and Spinoza would say it doesn't always work, but it is where you have to aim for. And so the good detective is the person who, rummaging through their own emotions, uses those emotions as the template to understand others. But more than that, uses them as a way of understanding those humans, yes, as ends in themselves, but also as reason in themselves, as a thing to understand in themselves. Never an object to loathe, never an object to hate, but rather as a fellow reasoning creature. If you can do that, of course, Spinoza is saying, then you can wrong-foot emotions. You can provoke emotions of esteem and even self-esteem, all of which accord with reason, as to like a human for what they are and what they do, to value them for what they allow you to do, Spinoza says, is of course only natural, and yet is very distinct from pride. For pride, a human thinks only of themselves, of their own individuality, wanting to assert it at all times, at all possibilities, not thinking of their properties, but merely of who they are, who they were born to be. And he's contrasting self-esteem and esteem with pride, which he sees as a form of insecurity, and no better than false humility. How do you look for common notions? Where do you look for ideas, adequate ideas? You look for them in yourself. Through understanding those emotions that open out into other worlds, they're like the blacksmith striking down. They don't lead you to hate one thing or to fixate upon them one time, but open you up, that allow you, Spinoza will say, to navigate properly the world of habit. That is, to understand what you are. Not a single thing consumed by this love or that, but rather the person who is caught up in numerous desires, who needs multiple things. And Spinoza will say it is only by managing your emotions that you can really create that space for habit. You have to meditate then on all the things you need and do them one by one and enrich yourself and understand yourself as that which needs enriching. And so joy and pleasure are good in that they allow you to enrich who and what you are, to become more than you were, to change what you are. And only a monster, he would say, no doubt thinking of the Calvinist priests of his days, would preach that joy was bad, that pleasure an evil, and would laud humility and grovelling subservience over trying to understand yourself as a free citizen in an open world. Yes, torn by emotions that break upon you like storms, but yet, as you are, as those emotions break into you and onto you, able to mitigate them, to understand those that come from your nature, and to pull those away from all the rest. And pulling them away from all the rest, you allow yourself a chance to renegotiate who you are and who and what you are. You allow yourself not to become the hate-filled man with the iron hammer striking always down on the face of his enemies, but rather the blacksmith of men's souls, able to change what their emotions are, shift their sentiments, able through understanding who and what they are to locate as Bucket locates the criminal, through a nest of possibilities and a mirage of people who think they might be a bit guilty. Simply through understanding where the enigma was, where the singularity was, where the rupture was, where most people will just see a little bit of the rupture and understand it. What do I mean by that? Well, negative emotions, as I think I said before, are very difficult to understand. They're difficult to understand because the idea doesn't exist in God, and then they impact and resonate across the mind. And so one negative thought will erupt in lots of different places. Lots of different places will understand it differently. So pain becomes fear, becomes hate, becomes anxiety, becomes hope, becomes guilt, becomes humility. It bleeds across different time frames as you're understanding it according to slightly different positions or where it's going to take you. What journey is it already leading you on? But the emotional detective then is the one who pulls out all those emotions from the original cause and traces it all back to the original caesura, which pulled then out from all its emotional consequences simply becomes revealed for what it is. The person who did the crime, who was, of course, in Bleak House, not the person who you most expect, is deliberately done that way. But somebody who's almost lost in the plot, almost hardly there, not a main character. And that's the point of the story, but that's the point of an emotional detective. By the time they've finished, that which they are excluding from the mind will feel of the least importance. Because all the ramifications that it has had has existed in you, in what you have made it to be, and its own singularity matters not a cog to you. And therefore, the value of the emotional detective is to see things as they actually are. To see in those emotions that which needs to be augmented, how deep pride, that is a traitor to the soul, can become a self-esteem. How pleasure need not become a prison, but merely become part of an overall set of habits, part of a joy that allows you to nourish yourself differently and constantly, that allows you to comprehend who and what you are. How desire then can become not the servant of this blind alley, this love external to the soul and forced upon it, but rather can become the true servant of the human spirit and resolve itself into an adequate idea so that you may desire many things, understand yourself caught up in a wider world. Desire in Spinoza, like it is in Dickens, is always something that is had somewhere else, always in the wrong body. It is in the nature of a desire. But reason allows that desire to be held within a framework, a movement, a middle of desiring, so that it becomes part of a whole set of desires, a whole movement that allows you to understand that desire, not as a tyrant, but as virtue would have it, as a way to grapple and to think through the world. Desire, so seen, is what sets you free.